Hey everyone, it's Connor MacDougall. I'm here for another video to educate you guys about the real estate process. This one's not going to be focused on Tri-Cities specifically. I'm actually going to be talking about contracts. This is kind of an introduction video just talking about some general info and things you need to know about all of the contracts and forms that you'll be seeing. I like to do this just so people have kind of an idea going in when they go to sign or write up their first contract, especially for first-time home buyers. It tends to really bring those stress levels down and help people be prepared for what they're going to be doing when they're submitting their first offer. So the first thing I wanted to touch on is the fact that 95, maybe even 99% of the time, you're buying or selling a house in Washington State. The realtor who's helping you is going to be using the Washington standardized forms. These were brought into play to help kind of make the process more streamlined and make it easier for people to write contracts so there aren't as many typos and aren't as many kind of errors, mistakes. It's easier to interpret them on the other side when you're reviewing the contract and presenting it to your seller or buyer. It really kind of helps everyone involved to make the process more simplified and standard, like the forms would suggest. Second thing I wanted to touch on is not to be overwhelmed when you see what you're going to be signing. Most contracts these days are about 20 pages or more, depending on which addendums and which contingencies are filed along with that contract. It's something that it may be overwhelming when you see the stack of papers, but there's basically a different form for every purpose. And as time has gone on, these forms have grown. There used to only be about 1 to 2 pages for a real estate contract way back when. But over time, kind of like how the OSHA laws are written in blood, a lot of these real estate forms come from lawsuits and judgments. So what's happened is they've basically created forms that make it a lot more clear cut and a lot easier to interpret which way to settle and kind of who's in the right when it comes to a contract if there ever is a dispute. The third thing I wanted to touch on is the fact that closings must be scheduled on business days. So a lot of people would prefer if the closing was on a weekend. Unfortunately, this isn't possible with real estate purchases because you need to have that title office and the county recording office able to actually record those documents and make the whole transfer official. So it does have to be on a business day. That means no weekends and no holidays. Number 4, and this is a really important one, is you'll notice that there's not many forms that you sign with your realtor where the realtor signature is on it as well as yours. The purchase and sale agreement does have both realtors' information on it. That's mostly for communication purposes and basically to track the transaction and kind of who took care of that purchase and sale. But what you'll notice is it's your signatures and the sellers, or yours and the buyers if you're on the selling side. And what that means is that this isn't an agreement between you and your realtor and their realtor and them. This is directly an agreement between the buyers and the sellers in that contract. So although the realtors are preparing the contracts, it is ultimately the buyers and sellers' responsibilities to review those, because when they're signing whatever is filled out on that contract. That's why I always like to walk through these with my clients to make sure they understand exactly how it's filled out, rather than just preparing it for them, sending that to them and telling them to sign it, because then they don't really know what they're getting themselves into, even though they've signed and they are responsible and going to be held to those terms. The fifth one is that if you're seeing capitalized letters somewhere in that contract, especially if it's not at the start of a sentence, those capitalized letters signify that that term or that word has been defined earlier in the contract, usually on the purchase and sale agreement on page 1. So things like property, purchase price, buyer, seller, closing date, earnest money, these are all terms that are defined on that first page of the purchase and sale agreement, that Form 21 that we're going to talk about. And so when those are defined, if you need a reminder what those are, you can go back to that first page of the purchase and sale and look for that capitalized term where something's been filled out. Another important one to understand is the computation of time when it comes to these contracts. So if you go to page 4, section L of that purchase and sale agreement, Form 21 for residential that we're going to talk about, there's going to be a computation of time section that you're going to be seeing on the screen right now. What this explains is when there are deadlines and times, how they work. And one very important thing to know is that if there's a day's deadline, like say you have this many days, anything that's 5 days or less only counts business days and doesn't count weekends or holidays. So when you see 3-day deadlines or 2-day deadlines on the contract, and it's a Saturday and you know that the bank's not open, don't stress, because those 2 days count 2 business days. So yeah, it's just like if you sign something on a Saturday, the clock's not going to start counting till Monday. And if Monday's a holiday, it's not actually going to start until Tuesday. So that's important to know. And then obviously 6 days and up, when you see those day timelines, is going to count all days. So something to keep in mind. Those shorter deadlines, I know people stress sometimes about being able to get documentation they need if banks are closed or things like that, but you do have business days to get those done if it is 5 days or less on that contract. Another important thing to remember about the computation of time, when it's a day count, whatever day you sign and that agreement is reached counts as day 0, which means if you get 3 days, say you sign at 9 a.m. on a Tuesday, that's your day 0, and your day 1, the count, doesn't actually start until the Wednesday. So in that case, if it was 3 days, you'd have Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Friday at 9 p.m., that time is the other important factor that's constant unless otherwise specified. Everything does expire at 9 p.m. on these deadlines. And number 7, this is one that I just need to state out loud, ironically, but communications and any kind of binding agreements have to be in writing. So just because your realtor reached out and made an offer over the phone and the other realtor said, yep, they accept that, we got a deal, that deal isn't finalized until you have it in writing, signed by both parties, and until it's actually been delivered back to the, not the last party who signed, but the people who signed first. So that's important to know, that just because someone says like, yes, we agree to that, or no, we don't, or they give you notice verbally, it has to be backed up in writing, or else it's not going to be held as a valid contract, because it does have to be in writing and signed and delivered to all parties. So I hope this was helpful for everyone. Obviously, keep on watching. I'm going to get into the individual contracts and be breaking down how each of those forms, addendums, contingencies, all those things work, and giving you a rough overview of what to be prepared for when writing an offer. Yeah, so keep watching this playlist. If you come to the end of it, I'm going to be releasing them kind of periodically as I go here. So subscribe to the channel, keep your eyes peeled, hit that bell for notifications, and you'll be seeing when I upload the newest contract or the newest revision in this series. So hope you have a great day, and I'll see y'all again next time.